you can say a lot of things as a leader, but your actions are almost always going to speak louder than words, right? So it's by doing the work, by being engaged, by being available, by being there, by putting your hand into the plow, whatever it needs to be, you're willing to do that. If you do that, then you break down some of those walls of distrust.
So welcome back to the Business Behind Your Business podcast for small business owners and leaders everywhere. And look, if you are in business, if you are leading a team, not every day is a day that you want to turn up to work. It's not every day is one of those days that you get excited to be getting out of bed and heading into the office or the factory or the warehouse. But why is that? There's something missing perhaps in the way that we're leading, something missing in perhaps the way that our business operates. So what is that key ingredient? Well, our guest today is going to help us unlock what that key ingredient is. And look, we've already got some sneak previews of this. So if you go back and listen to some of our past conversations, you'll see a bit of a thread coming through in the conversations we're having about one of the skills that you as a business owner and leader need to have in your business. Now, it is a tough grind. It's not always a great day to be a business owner, but it is a tough grind. The rewards are there, but it doesn't have to be without joy. And Dr. Calvin Lawrence Jr., our guest today, believes that happiness, hope, and human connection are not just feel-good ideas. They're powerful leadership tools. And we're going to unlock this and explore this further in this episode. We're going to learn why it's important to stay positive and grounded when leadership gets hard. And look, guarantee business gets hard. You will have hard days. Why the relationships that you have in your business are so important and the real foundation for what you can achieve as a business, and how you can develop that culture of mentorship. And look, mentoring employees, other professionals. I've really benefited from that in my experience, in my leadership journey, my business journey. There's some great value in becoming a mentor and leaving a legacy behind. So Dr. Calvin Henry Lawrence Jr., nationally respected leadership expert, motivational speaker, and author of The Happy Leader, Relatable Stories of Influence and Hope. He's got over 40 years of experience in education, from classroom to college to the dean's office. Seen firsthand how strong leadership rooted in relationships can change lives. And through his platform of calvinlawrencespeaks.net, he's been inspiring audiences with his messages on leadership, mentorship, and purpose. And today, we're privileged because he's here on the Business Behind Your Business podcast to share his vision of how happiness, hope can become your leadership superpower. So, Calvin, welcome to the Business Behind Your Business.
Thank you so much, Paul. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. Look, I've had the pleasure of chatting to you before we started recording, and as you can see, if you're listening to this, you won't be able to see it, but if you're watching the video, you'll be seeing that there's a big grin on my face because this is a topic that really excites me, and there's a reason for that. So, look, why is it that we need to embrace this happy leadership mindset?
Paul, I think it is so important, just in life in general, but when you're running a business, a company, a corporation, you have people, individuals that you need to, there's a piece to that piece of business that is inspirational, right? And so it's more than the financial piece. If that is the end game, it's more than, numbers and figures, whatever they might be in terms of what do we have to hit for our target goals. It is the people part that's the most important part. And if you figure that out, it took me a long time, Paul, I hate to admit it, but it was years before I really realized that it's relationship. The relationship piece is the most meaningful thing, and it's the core foundation to everything. If you get that right, then everything else falls into place. So I really believe that it's important to work that part of it. And it's not like you're trying to be somebody you're not. And hopefully you're that type of guy or gal. If you're not, you got to get that way, especially if you get into leadership. And we talked about that a little bit because it's all about leadership. Leadership trickles down to everything and affects everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I think there's a trap there for a lot of business owners because they don't equate themselves as leaders And like something, and part of the reason they don't equate themselves as leaders is because they're only dealing with a small team, and that might be one or two people, but you are still leading that team. You are
Just a
still
leader, right? You still lead. I mean, you could be a leader and you could only have that one person on your team, and you're a leader. And let me just throw this out here too, because I keep having this conversation about it's even more than the title, because on a team, because of the expert knowledge, and we talked about, I'm not a technology expert, right? So I may be on the team, and the person on the team who becomes a leader when it comes to technology has to step up into that role. And I have no problem allowing them to step into that role because I know they're the expert, I am not. So it's about influence. It's about how you impact people. And I'm big on that in terms of, if we have a team who can do what best at that time, that role they become that leader in that particular instance, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. So really, and I think this is also another trap, is that a business owner will hire employees and hire their team members to grow their business, or so that they can actually do less of the day-to-day business, working in the business, but they don't give the responsibility or the ownership or the empowerment to their team. So often you find that team members doing that role, and there's a bit of resentment because they're not allowed to do it properly, and they're not given, I guess
You're not giving a lot of support or help or assistance, right?
yeah,
I think if I'm reading you right, and I'm gonna try to reiterate, so I'll make sure I'm right on target with what you just said, because I see it. I see leaders who, you said, they hire people to do a certain thing, and so that they don't have to do as much work. But let me tell you, especially when it comes to that people piece, I don't know that you can give that off to somebody else. You can hand it off to someone else. You've got to be engaged and involved, and it's not just at the major functions, because some of these guys and gals, they're like, okay, I want to be visible when this big deal is happening, but it's day to day. It's kind of like what I think we're on the same page. It's day to day. You're being there, you're being involved, you're assisting, you're willing to do whatever it takes to move that thing along. You're a facilitator and you're a leader at the same time, but you're visible and you're available. And if you can do that, and almost everybody can do that, even if you don't have the greatest, I'll say it like this, the greatest personality, or some people seem to have more charisma than others. I always felt like I didn't have as much charisma, Paul, but I knew I could do the day-to-day stuff, and I could keep being out there and available to the people who needed me. And if you do that, you can never push that off onto somebody else. Yes, they're going to have their individual roles and specialties, but when it comes to that, being that person to be able to be available to talk to, or to be able to just mentor, and I know I heard you mention the mentoring, you got to be able to do that. And if you do that, those people won't want to leave you. They'll stay. And I think, we were talking about a dentist who didn't have the turnover and all this. Yeah, and hey, you will have people who will fight to stay with you and work for you because of those relationships, if you do it right.
Yeah, and those relationships are key, because I think I see so many business owners that employ people, but they create this environment of distrust because, I have this saying that delegation is not abdication, where
Right.
they sort of
Oh,
give every responsibility, but then they jump in and want to be the guy scoring the final,
Yeah, it's going that
the final try across on the
a
field.
goal or whatever whatever it might be. Yeah.
Yeah. So how do we move from that environment of, I guess, distrust that
Yeah.
you can create, to an environment where, like you said, where you want people fighting to be part of your team, that really want to be working, I guess, with you as part of that team that you're building.
Yes. So what I always say is that if you're a leader, and especially if maybe you're a new leader and there's been an environment or a culture of distrust, that's really that's job number one. You've got to make it a priority. And how do you build trust? Well, you build it by being there every day, some of the things we've already mentioned, I'll go back over. You do it by being consistent, being everyday, being someone who's trustworthy, showing that you have integrity. You can say a lot of things as a leader, but your actions are almost always going to speak louder than words, right? So it's by doing the work, by being engaged, by being available, by being there, by putting your hand in to the plow, whatever it needs to be, you're willing to do that. If you do that, then you break down some of those walls of distrust because, and let me just say it, I've been in some places where the distrust was pretty thick. I was in a place for 1 year and I was not the leader, but it was so there was so much discord and distrust that it was going to be a 1 year gig for me because I needed to get out of there quick because I didn't want to go down that rabbit hole. But you can turn that around if you're willing to do, and in that case, that particular leader was not. If you're willing to do the heavy lifting at the beginning in order to do, and let me throw this in before I close it. It is something that you have to continue to work on. I saw a saying somewhere where they say relationships are constantly changing. So it's not like you get it and you're done and you can sit back and you can kind of relax. You've got to continue to work that thing. And if the relationship starts to change, then you've got to work to get it back to where it needs to be so that it's viable and it's in a good place where that is healthy. And that means consistent work. That means you got to get in there and do the work on a daily basis.
Yeah. So a lot of really good content there. So how, like you've described quite a tough situation there as not as a leader, but as a leader, when you do face these tough situations, how do you stay positive about it, and how do you actually look for the ways to create that more positive environment?
Well, I'll give you a few things. I try to have conversations. I have had a leader who once said everything begins with a conversation. And I didn't realize how powerful that statement was until I really delved into it. But it's like, yeah, everything begins, because even if you start a project, you're going to have a conversation. If you hire someone, you're going to have a conversation. So everything begins with a conversation, but then you continue to work those conversations. So you want to have good conversations. You want to, I call it walking across the room. I learned this from a guy years ago. He said, people are a little standoffish, and especially if you're in an environment, where it's been distrustful and whatnot, they're not going to come over to you and you're the new leader. So you've got to be the guy or gal. You've got to be the person to go across the room and introduce yourself and spend time with them. You can maintain a positive attitude and then get some people excited about, this person's different. They're different than what we're used to. I think about showing humility, and that's a word that you just can't say I'm humble. It's a show me or nothing word. If you don't show that you're humble, then they will know that they will know you're either humble or you're egotistical. And if you're in a humble person, you're in a humble mindset, you're ready to serve, you're ready to do whatever it needs that takes place. I mean, that changes some people's especially if the leader before was not that way. That's a paradigm shift. And that can get people positive and keep you positive too. I think it does. I know it does for me. And then it's like, I have one that I like to say, it's giving people a benefit of the doubt. So if I'm coming in as a new leader, I give them I don't want to, I need to back up and share it like this. So a lot of times you'll get a notice about, these people are like this, and they'll tell you this. Yeah, they'll tell you that the group is like this. When I was a educator in the schools, they would always say, these kids are horrible and this. And so here's what I like to do. I like to come in with a clean slate, because what they told you may not be how those people, that person, those children relate to you. You come in, you give them the benefit of the doubt. And the benefit of the doubt is you have to prove yourself to be unworthy. I'm going to treat you like you're worthy, like you're first class, like you're on. And then if you mess it up, then that's on you. But I'm not going to come in with this that's the word I wanted to use, preconceived notion that there's something wrong with you and I've got to do. No, I come in with a way that I believe everybody has worth, self-worth, value. And I believe that's a lot more positive all around for not just a leader, but the people that you're coming in contact with.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't help but thinking of some of the teams I've joined in the past where, as part of your little tour around the office or your onboarding, well, it's a historical onboarding, you get told in a whisper, yeah, that person's like this, and you don't want to be you don't want to be with them.
Yeah. That's horrible, but it happens everywhere. It happens too many times. And if you take that to heart, I mean, you already come in with this notion, that person. So then there's walls that were already there, but you put up more walls. And instead, if you come in with the opposite, where you don't come in believing what somebody else shared, they'd have to prove it to you. You come in believing that they're going to be the best person ever. Or maybe one other way of looking at it is if they're a tough nut to crack, I'll use that term, and you come in and you can turn them over and around, it's like, that's going to be my job to make sure that they know that I'm in here for them and for everyone else. And they see that, and they have to see it over time, because it won't happen like that. But if you continue to be consistent, I said that, you continue to do the things that you need to do, yourself, your transparency is there, you're working for that trust, and you turn those people around. And sometimes that is enough to turn around a whole group of people, because they see, man, she's never been that way at work, or he's never been that way in that position. And all of a sudden, they're doing things that they've never done before. Why is that? Because they've got a real relationship. They know that they've got somebody they can trust, that there's somebody that they may not always agree, but they are going to be truthful and honest and work with them, and they'll work with them and work through any of the problems that they might have to incur.
Mhm. And I think by avoiding that preconceived idea of what somebody is like, I guess your mindset, your approach is completely different. You're not coming with a downtrodden, oh no, I've got to deal with this issue.
Yeah.
It's more about, how can we make this great?
Hey, it is a mindset thing, Paul. And I think about the people that talk mindset and have done the research on it. If you change that mindset to where it's not going to be a perfect world, and I'm not trying to share with everybody that it's going to be roses and daisies and all of that, just because I do all these things, but it's going to be a lot better. And in your mind, it keeps you positive, which sort of reflects. And so reflection, if you're positive, it reflects that with the people, and then vice versa. I think you'll get that, you'll see that, and then it kind of comes back to you, because if they're positive and you coming in and you're getting these, hey, how are you doing, Dr. Lawrence, or how's it going, Paul? Or, and every day, I mean, how can you not come in and feel like, even though the day may not be perfect, you've got these great people around you. I have a saying too, that I don't care how tough that day is, if I got the right people and my people are great, we can tackle anything. If you come in with that kind of attitude, there's nothing that will really take you down or take you out.
Yeah. It's like every business is going to encounter a tough time. It's a guarantee. There's going to be something that comes up. It could be an issue with a customer, an issue with environment, or some kind of. There's going to be tough times, and I think
there's going to be something will break down. It might be a facilities thing item, and you don't have any control over it. But how do you work through that, and how do you make the day still a positive day for everybody that's concerned? You can still do that. And the best leaders I've been around, Paul, have always been able to do that. And then you never know, you wouldn't know that they were upset about something just because of the way they handle it, the way they're calm, their demeanor, or the way they tackle it, and the way they just kind of press forward. If you can continue to do that, then I mean, it speaks volumes for the type of person you are, the character you have, and the way this company is going to be run from here on out. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, I guess in those situations where there is a crisis and you're managing it, without being panicky and angry about it, I guess you're probably not showing pure joy at that time, but there's an absence of anger. And I guess that's inspiring.
Yeah, I think it's inspiring. I think you're right, because there are times when you've got these issues and you know they're that. But if you're not panicking and if you're not trying to, one of the worst ones is trying to place blame on certain people or whatnot, and you got people like that, and it's like I guess because I always look at myself internally and say, now what have I done to do? You never place the blame, and I guess this is a point of reference to some people who might be listening to this. You never place the blame, and you never do it openly. And the calmness, I think it maybe comes over time. And there are some people that are calmer than others when it comes to critical situations. But I know over time, I know that if I'm the leader, role leader, and I'm placed in that position and something bad happens, and everybody's looking at you for reassurance, for faith, for trust, for whatever. And if you're calm and you can study the ship, as the old sea captains used to do, you can study the ship. Everybody comes out that situation a lot better. Is it perfect? No, but it's going to be a lot better than if we panic or we start placing the blame. And instead of saying, okay, now how do we solve this thing? How do we make this better? And we're gonna pull up our whatever we need to pull up, and we're gonna get it together, and we'll get through this day. And in most cases, when you do that, you do.
Yeah, yeah. So you've got a lot of experience in leadership roles. You've gone into, I guess, I'm guessing you've gone into some situations which were not as ideal as they were described to you when you took on that role.
Yeah.
And you've had these issues, like we said, the little conversations as you walk around. You know, that person's going to be trouble. This person's something to avoid. And we've sent you know, with the leadership, the approach starts with you as the leader. But how do you, I guess, transform your team? How do you mentor them into that sharing that leadership, that joyful experience, or passion about wanting to turn up and face those situations and work together?
Oh, well, and I think I heard the word mentoring in there, so I'm gonna use that as my big pivot piece here. So if I'm working with a team and I don't know where they were or where they've been or what their situations are, but you can learn your people. And I think the best mentors are the ones who figure out, what presses that person's button, what gets to that person. But it's only through spending time with them, right? So you've got to spend some really good quality time. Going back to what we were saying before, you can't push it off on someone else and stay in your office or never come into the office. You've got to be able to spend time. And it's probably more pertinent to spend it up front than it is on the back end. If you do those things early, then you get to know your people and where they stand. And so to do the mentoring thing right, I've got to know where people are in their walks. They might be the same age, but they may not be anywhere in terms of the same maturity or whatever it might be. And so you got to work with them at all these different levels. And that's not easy, but it's a fun conundrum if you make it fun. And then you know that, well, Joe needs it this way, but Sally's got to be this way, and she can just take off if you just give her a few things. You don't have to. In fact, she's probably a little more nervous when you do it that way. So you learn your people, you make sure you know what pushes their button, and then you also know what motivates or inspires them and what gives them the confidence that they need, and you just continue to do that. And it's going back to having those conversations, you have a conversation, you have conversations over whatever, so that when the big times or hard times come, the hard situations, that you're not thrown into this thing all of a sudden. You kind of know what she's thinking or what he's thinking, and vice versa. They know kind of how you like to do things, and then you can take it from there. But the mentoring piece, it's so important. If you're a leader, then you got to be a mentor. And it doesn't matter if they're the same age, if they're younger, or they're older. if you're the leader, the part of your job is to mentor, and then part of your job is to foster an environment for mentoring. So, because you may not be able to mentor. Let's say you have 200 people and you're working with you probably aren't going to be able to mentor all 200. But if you get your team leaders and then you figure some of those things out, then it becomes a kind of a delegation, and then people can move and do some things to help, so that everybody has someone to work with them and help someone to support them.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've captured a lot of your experience and some of the stories that we've only just touched on here, but you've captured all of those in the book, the Happy Leader. What are probably some of the key things that the key learnings that you would grab from reading through the book?
Well, I can think of a couple. That leadership for sure is a process, that you don't get it all at once. That I always cringe when, Paul, I think back to my first few years as a leader, and I'm thinking, you come out of university and you think you know it all, and you'd probably know less than most people, but you come out thinking that way, and then life kind of hits you and you figure some things out, and maybe I need to listen to some of those folks that are a little bit wiser and have already gone the path, so that leadership's a process. Here's one that I don't think a lot of people think about, and that's failure sometimes is the best teacher if you're willing to learn through the situation. So I've had and I have a whole chapter devoted to that. I call them my desert times, but there were failure situations where I thought I failed, but in actuality, it was a learning process for me to grow and to get better and to understand this is how I need to do this in the future. So failure is one of them. I'll go back to the mentorship piece, because I didn't touch on this, but that mentorship is a two-way street. Mentorship is a two-way street. And how I mean that is that mentees are not disavowed of having some responsibility in that role. So we always put a lot of onus on the mentors, but the mentees have some work to do too. And sometimes it's a reverse. I think there's a word for it. It's like reverse mentorship, where sometimes the mentees can teach the mentor some things and vice versa. But mentees have to go after their mentors. Sometimes those mentors are maybe not available when they need to be, but if a mentee needs to do certain things, but it's a two-way street. And the benefits, I'd like to say it's about 50-50, but I don't know. Sometimes mentors get more out of it than the mentees, but mentees also have a role to play. There's one that I think about, and that is, and we talked about this, the best thing that I can do in any situation is stay positive. So even in those times that are very difficult, and now it's easier for me having experience to know I've gone through a lot of different walks and problems in life, and I've seen that, and that's my backstory. So it kind of gives me some ammo to say we worked through that, and we can work through this too. But the best thing that I can do during that process, as I'm working through that journey, if it's like let's say it's a layoff situation where you're out of work for a while, but the best thing I can do is to stay positive, because if I'm not, then I won't be ready when that next opportunity comes. I like this one, and I'll share this one with the group, and that is that one role or title doesn't define you. You're more complex than that. And by that, I mean that even though you have a role or a title, and we talk about leaders in different ways, but that role or title does not define who you are. You're a lot more complex. What I've learned over time is I'm a lot more complex than just if I'm a dean or I'm a director of something, but then there are other times that I'm something else to someone. And that one role won't define you. If you understand that, I don't think you get bogged down in that in terms of thinking about, well, I'm the guy, I've got to be this. No, it's like that. That's not totally who you are. In fact, that's not really who you are when you're at home or when you're out in the public, you're somebody maybe totally different. And trying to think. Um, Here's one, and it comes directly from the book. People don't care how much you know until they know that you care. So it kind of goes back to what we were saying before about how you have to work through, make sure you don't come in with preconceived notions, but show that you care through your actions and not just your words.
Yeah, yeah, some great points to leave us with, and yeah, often I'll ask our guests to leave us with one action or one main thing to take away. We've just hit the jackpot there because we've got
Well,
this.
I will give you that one if I can encapsulate it. It's like relationships are the key to this whole thing. Relationships are key to being a happy leader. I know that I'm gonna have some failure somewhere, but if I really work the process of trying to be as honest and as forthcoming as I can, and if I do that, I'm going to be that happy leader, or I will have a much better chance of becoming a happy leader because I've worked the relationship process. And then all of those results that I need to have at the back end, whatever they need to be, will be because we've made those strong relationships. So it's kind of that overarching theme, because relationships ties into mentoring, ties into pretty much everything that we talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. So pulling it all together, that's great. Now, the Happy Leader book. How do we get a how do we get a copy of the Happy Leader book?
Well, you mentioned probably the easiest one is my website, which is calvinlawrencespeaks.net. And when you go to the website, on the first page, there's a link to Amazon. It's real easy. Amazon and also Barnes and Noble. I think there's a link to the US, and there's also a link to the UK, and you can get it through one of those processes. That's probably the easiest way to do it.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, we'll share the links to calvinlawrencespeaks.net and also how you buy the book, and encourage you to check that out as always. And if there's something that you've missed or you want to share, go to the businessbehindyourbusiness.com website, where all the show notes will be, and extra resources, links to that, and links also to how you can catch some of Dr. Calvin Lawrence's some of the sessions that he shared, and where you can find him, because I know that he's not just sharing with us on the podcast, but he's very generously sharing his experience, not just through the book, but through his engagements, in everyday life. Look, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast. We've really enjoyed it. I haven't stopped smiling the whole time.
Paul, thank you. I'm the same way over here. I'm just excited that we've connected. We are able to do this today, and hopefully somebody will benefit from it.
Absolutely. That's what we want. We want business owners, leaders to benefit and to grow. And look, if you have benefited, don't be selfish. Share this knowledge, share this episode with somebody else that does need to hear this message, and become a happy leader. So once again, thank you, Calvin. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, sir. Same here.